are back to basketball. Oh, man. Cutting that one close on 30 seconds. Welcome back to basketball. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, welcome in Luke, welcome in Jamal. Talk to me a little bit about this Atlanta-New York game. I think we're all watching and chuckling at. Is it the Spike Lee outfit, or what's funny is going on in this one, Luke?
Man, I'm digging this Delano Ganari, however you say his name. It's his haircut. This mohawk is so strong. It reminds me of. I feel like he just didn't get to be that 17-year-old on the football team back in high school and make that deep playoff run. It's so strong. I mean, seriously, it's like. We talk about it here and there. Like, I'm a Brooklyn guy. I don't want New York to win, but I've obviously bashed Atlanta pretty good throughout the season. So I'm in a lose spot here. So I just kind of want it to be over and them to lose in the next round.
All right. So aside from the haircut, what do you think's been funniest so far in this one, Jamal?
Well, you can go a couple of angles. You can go Spike Lee's crazy outfit, and I think he basically cursed Julius Randle with how poorly he's been playing so far. I mean, whatever he said to him before game one, obviously it has not worked. So 6 for 23 in game one, and I think he's like 0 for 4, only 2 points now. So whatever Spike said, it must have thrown Julius off.
The Spike Lee. It's almost like the Reggie Miller choke thing, right? So now he's got.
Which fans do not want to hear that? That's the last name they want.
Now he's got a 22-year-old with no hair beating him up. I told the guys before the show started that I was watching that game and called implicit bias. I had no idea Kevin Huerter could jump like that. Like between the dunk and the block, which both happened like within a minute of each other, I had no idea Kevin Huerter could jump like that. We are going to jump right in to the midweek mid-range with our hot tea, cold brew segments. Hot tea, cold brew is brought to you by Yeti coolers, cups, and koozies. Well, where'd that go? There you go. Yeti coolers, cups, and koozies. Yeti's the go-to shop for keeping things hot or cold, just like these NBA stories. Yeti's based out of Austin, Texas. Check out the links in our social media handles for all your insulated needs for tailgating, camping, and daily life. Yeti is built for the wild. So it's based on an idea like you see Kermit sipping hot tea or maybe something cold. Like it's not that big a deal. Looking at what's hot and what's cold in the NBA right now. I'm going to start this off, though. Instead of asking you if something is hot or cold, I'm going to ask y'all for some hot tea first. Jamal, give me one team that is either tied or behind in a series that is in some hot tea.
Ooh, I would say I want to really keep a close eye on Portland, Denver, because what I saw the first two games, I see like Portland's offense, as we know, at their best, they're one of the most lethal teams from anywhere on the court, where you got Melo. Of course, you got Dame and CJ, but I think the X factor right now would probably have to be Nurkic right now, because he's probably got the toughest task out of all of them, after checking probably the MVP this year in Nikola Jokic. But then when you saw what happened in game two, when he was really taken out of the game, not only was Jokic busting him at the defensive end, he really didn't give him too much offensively. He only scored 10, 12 points and fouled out. So it's really going to be important for Portland to get off to a quick start going tomorrow night in game 3, because I think if the Nuggets get some momentum going forward, I think the Blazers are going to be in serious trouble, because we know they can't play any defense. They're in the bottom of the league right now. So that's going to be the matchup we're going to be looking forward to for the next couple of days or so.
Give me a hot tea team, Luke. Give me someone in hot tea.
Hot tea. What about the Mavericks just curb stomping the Clips right now? It looks ugly. Looks ugly for the baby brother in LA. And more than that, I've heard it, on a couple other podcasts and stuff, and I feel like it's just not being hit on enough. This Clippers team just underperforms every year. Luka's rising. You know who has a player option next year? Kawhi Leonard.
I have a question I want to ask you guys about the Clippers in a second, but the Clippers are in hot something. We'll call it tea for the sake of the episode right now. Next one. Is there a team that's kind of cold brew that you're just you're kind of cool on? Let's start with Luke this time.
The team I'm just cold on, man. This Hawks Knicks series it's fun to watch because it's Hawks Knicks, but I don't. Maybe it's because I'm a Brooklyn guy. I just don't see after this series anything really mattering for either team.
Fair enough. Are you cold? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you cold on 18 there, Jamal?
I want to go cold T. I'm going to go with the Boston Celtics. And let's face it, this is a team that has made the East Finals 3 out of the last 4 years and really have nothing to show for it, even though they have a good young nucleus in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And yet I just feel like this team is really going nowhere. So, and it also leaves the question, what's going to happen with the team's future? I wonder what's going to happen with Danny Ainge. And, of course, Brad Stevens, even though there's been conflicting reports about him being on the hot seat. So I would not be surprised if there would be a lot of changes coming forward for Boston in the next year or so.
Fair enough. I want to get to Boston a little bit later, too. That's funny. Y'all hit on some of the same teams I had in mind. All right, we're going to start this more traditional part of the hot tea cold brew with Jamal. We're just going to snake draft this thing back and forth. Hot tea, cold brew, Jamal, alluding to something Luke brought up a second ago, or maybe you brought up as well. Hot tea, cold brew, the Clippers will blow it up if they get swept. What do you think?
Hot tea, it's definitely hot tea if they get swept. And honestly, this is probably one of the more frustrating teams I think we have in the NBA. When you have two perennial all-stars on both ends of the floor, in Leonard and Paul George, and you're telling me that you're having trouble with a 22-year-old European kid right now who is taking y'all asses to the woodshed right now. Like, you would think after last year, after they beat him 4-2, that, okay, we maybe have a decent game plan for him, that we were able to do some different things. But even in that series, Luka was taking things in his own hands. And remember, KP, Kristaps Porzingis wasn't even playing throughout most of that series anyway. So I think if I'm Steve Ballmer, I really would consider blowing this thing up if they honestly, even if they don't get swept, if they get beat by Dallas, do not expect to be this Clippers team to be together next year.
Talk to me, Luke. Hot tea, cold brew, the Clippers should blow it up.
Yeah, I mean, how many times can you blow it up, right? I mean, I guess it's hot tea to an extent. I feel like you got to do something, especially if Kawhi doesn't re-sign. If he turns down his player option, you have to trade Paul George to try to get some pieces back because of that big trade that you made for Paul George. Now, to get Kawhi Leonard there, you got to do that trade 10 times out of 10. It looks terrible in hindsight, but at the time, it's like, yeah, we got Kawhi. We're bringing in Paul George, little Batman Robin thing going on. And then they were both just like, you know what? Load management. Let's just bring a new meaning to it.
See, that right there, that's the one thing that has kicked them right there, load management. Yeah. You thinking these other players in the past would have used load management to this point? That's the reason why they can't win right now. And that's the reason why Denver sent them home last year.
Well, and so it's interesting too, because like it's one thing to be the leader of a team and be silent, right? Like I'm not saying you've got to be this boisterous, loud, like I think Draymond does way more talking than Steph Curry, but I would call Steph Curry the leader of the Warriors, right? Mm-hmm. It's another thing to be a quiet guy and take days off work and all that stuff that came out last year about like he and Paul George getting extra treatment, missing these practices, missing that. Like they got Lou Will and Montrez out of there, but like that was still said. Like that would come out of nothing. And so I think that's all interesting. I think the fascinating thing to me is that like Kawhi turned out his player option could be a move for more money and just re-signing with LA if he wants to this summer. But he could have completely had the franchise turn itself over for him, and for what? Like that just to get bounced right in the. I guess we're talking about the first round this year and second round last year. I don't know what other path they got because you got Kawhi Leonard. Obviously, his body's breaking down on him, but he is really good.
Is it really breaking down on him though?
I don't think he moves the same way he thought he did in Toronto. Do you think he moves the same way he did in Toronto? I mean, like he's not been asked to do the same things either, I guess, but it just doesn't look the same to me.
I mean, his last year with the Spurs, whenever he kind of forced his way out of San Antonio, it was to kind of preserve himself to play as long as he could. And Toronto did that for him. And I feel like because they won in Toronto, every team was like, oh, yeah, no, we'll bring Kawhi in. We'll let him sit a lot. And then, and then a win. It also could just be the curse of the Clippers. They've never even made a Western Conference Finals.
Which is, like, as we look at this roster, you got Kawhi, whatever. Paul George, number 2, number 3. I don't know. Playoff P is not a great look. Then the roster stinks. like
you don't like Luke Kennard and Morris? You don't like those guys together?
You're paying Luke Kennard a bunch of money to watch basketball games. You got to play Reggie Jackson 30 minutes. You got to pay Patrick Beverly $13 million to not be able to cover Luka Doncic. Like, what are you doing? I look at this roster. They're playing Nick Batum and Serge Ibaka major minutes. Those dudes are past done. They're like good locker room guys, right? Like, I get why you want them on your team, but you don't want them on the floor. Like, there's a very, very big difference to me there. Am I off base here, Jamal? Like, I just don't think they've got a very good team.
No, and I think it's finally starting to catch up to them. So I honestly don't believe the Clippers really are the team that everybody thinks they are or everybody's talking about. And it's just getting to the point where Steve Ballmer is going to have to make that decision by the time the summer comes. If that's after they lose to Dallas or if they lose in the next round to whoever, if it's Utah or Memphis, who knows? But it's just that they're just missing something. It's just not there.
You say Steve Ballmer is. I feel like Steve Ballmer is like trying to play a version of 2K and it's not working, and he's just trying to like simulate seasons and then just fix it the next year. It's like I don't know what he's doing.
He's trying to do what the Lakers have done really successfully for years, and he's failing at it.
Yeah. Well, and like they're about to move out of Staples Center, and like, do you blow it up before you get a new stadium? That's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for moving your butt back to San Diego. Is what that is. That's just bad. I'm intrigued by the next one because we both alluded to this game, but we didn't necessarily allude to this guy before the show started. Hot tea, cold brew, Luke. Trae Young is the perfect NBA villain.
I hate him.
Not only true.
Go ahead and put him in the orange and blue and throw him in Madison Square Garden for the rest of his career. I'd be just happy with that. But you know, I think with Trae Young, you know, he's got a lot of heart. You kind of liked him coming out of Oklahoma. It's not really fair because of the whole Luka thing. So now that's how they're judged, and I feel like some people just hate Trae Young because he's not Luka. I think he just got a little too carried away with his ego before he really did anything. And I mean, he has plenty of time to correct that. You beat the Knicks and you take the Sixers into 5 or 6 games, something like that, and just keep building on that. You know, he can make a lot of people eat their words. But right now, yeah, he's fun as hell to root against. I love rooting against Trae Young. Just not the Knicks. It's killing me.
Well, I will say I was on Twitter talking about it. I would have loved to have seen the conversation on Twitter if Trae Young got the Hawks in the second round before Luka Doncic got the Mavs in the second round. It looks like it's going to happen at the same time, so that like is moot. But man, that would have been fun, huh? Jamal, hot tea, cold brew. Trae Young is the perfect NBA villain.
I will say cold tea. He's not the perfect villain, but he's getting up there. But just the way that he was going at MSG the other day, I thought it was something special. I'm like, am I seeing a miniature Reggie Miller right now? I mean, I know that's overstepping boundaries because I know, like, look, we all know what Reggie Miller was when he played in that building. So that's a little bit off. However, I will say another guy who I'm really rooting for as far as a villain is concerned, and I saw him play on Sunday night. I wonder about Dillon Brooks from Memphis. That guy has an edge. I like Dillon Brooks, and you know what? If Utah is not careful, Memphis could not only take him maybe in 7. I think they can win this series, with or without Mitchell.
So that's fascinating because, like, part of my thing with Trae Young is like you have to also look like a villain, right? Like that you have to be villain-esque. You can't just be good on the other team. Like JJ Redick looked like a villain once upon a time, right? So Trae Young is itty bitty, whereas Dillon Brooks is like kind of a giant, like subtly a giant, but he's like 6'7", 230. And then you got Trae Young was like the 5-star this, the big time that, everything out of college. Dillon Brooks was good, but not the same, right? And there's the Canadian thing, which is Trae Young was like the 5-star kid from Oklahoma. I think the biggest thing that the two have in common, though, aside from being very good basketball players on teams ruining people's like brackets and picks and bets of sorts, is they got the same bad haircut. And I think that is very key in being an NBA villain. There's got to be some discerning factor, like, and I hate this, I hate that, and I hate that haircut too, right? Like that. Trae Young's got the haircut, Dylan Brooks got the haircut. I could see it.
You should have saw Utah's Twitter after game 1. They were going after that man. And I said, if you got him going like that, you've already made a name for yourself, because Utah, they already have like their name, their fair share of villains coming through that area. The first name that comes to mind, Michael Jordan, but a lot of people don't remember. Y'all remember Vernon Maxwell?
Oh, Houston remembers Vernon Maxwell. If you don't follow Vernon Maxwell on Twitter, you've got to follow Vernon Maxwell on Twitter whenever Utah's on the TV, because it is so funny. It's so funny to watch him talk trash about Utah. It's also funny to watch Trae Young shush the Garden, though. As we talk about that game, they're up 12 about halfway through the third. I guess they could still turn around. Just didn't feel like it's going to turn around.
Because Randall's still not doing anything.
Julius Randle's, and I love Julius Randle. You talk about like perfect villain and Trae Young. Like I want Julius Randle to be the best. He's a good guy with a family, and like he's got a cute kid, and he's in New York, and he's finally getting his chance. And he got shipped out of LA, he got shipped out of New Orleans. Like, I wanted to be good. Hot tea, cold brew. We're gonna throw this to Luke as it's up his alley. Hot tea, cold brew. The Nets will win the East with ease.
Hot tea, cold. Can I have like a beer that's sitting next to the fridge as I'm like let my tea sit out a little while? I guess for the sake of it, I would say cold brew, but I don't think they're going to struggle as much as some people think they're going to with the Bucks and Sixers. I mean, if you just watched last night, Joe Harris is our fourth shooter, and he dropped 25, tied a franchise record for threes in a game. And it's like, who's going to guard him if he gets going? And he led the NBA in 3-point field goal percentage. This team's played, was it 9 or 10 games together now? Won all but 2 of those. They're just getting going, and James Harden just seems – like he wants to be a distributor. If you watch his team, their biggest problem right now, it's not defense like we all worried about it being. It's not them gelling. It's they're trying to share the ball too much. I watched them make a couple of plays last night where they could just went to the rack and they were like, I'm going to try to kick it out. See, get somebody else a look. But I just don't think there's enough people on other teams to guard, especially if Joe Harris gets rolling. KD said it last night in his interview, said, Joe gets going, that sets the whole team up. Next thing you know, team's behind 14 when the game starts.
So I have thoughts. Jamal, what do you think? Hot tea, cold brew. The Nets will win the East with ease.
I say cold. I don't think they'll win it with ease. I still think Milwaukee will give them problems because, yes, I do agree on Luke's point that Brooklyn is going to be able to really score well. And now you're adding Joe Harris to the mix. That it just makes them unstoppable. But to me, who on Brooklyn's roster do you really see stopping Giannis at this moment? That be a concern. I wonder how Kyrie's going to do against Drew Holiday, because in those 3 games, Drew Holiday really guarded Kyrie pretty well, probably about as well as you could have played. And yes, I do get it that James Harden. I don't think he even played Milwaukee this year at all. If he did, he only played like 1 game. Yeah. So I think that it's going to be important for the big 3 to show up a lot against Milwaukee, because the Milwaukee I'm seeing now against Miami is a much tougher team than in years past, because I thought the additions of Holiday, PJ Tucker, those were big moves. I think that the Bucks needed to make to really try to put themselves in a better position to compete.
I will say this: I don't mean to diminish what Philly's doing as they're up. What is that? 23 on the Wizards.
Russell Westbrook just went after a Sixers fan too.
Yes.
It was only a matter of time.
So here's the deal with Russell Westbrook after fans, and we can do this as a separate segment in a second. He manages to go after fans in cities that I hate the fans of. Yeah. I don't know what to do with that, because I feel like there's part of that's also on his side. But no, I think that, and I don't mean to diminish the Sixers too much, although we can diminish the Wizards some, I guess. I think that, to me, as I look at it, the winner of the Bucks Net series wins the East. Like I think
Yeah.
both of them, unless that series takes too much out of them, both of them to me beat Philadelphia. I have a hard time picking that series. I'm not a gambler, but if I were, I'd have to gamble on Milwaukee just because I've seen them play together more. It's hard to think, though, I'm going to gamble on Milwaukee and like the other team's got multiple MVPs. Like that seems weird too.
Yeah.
I will say that like there's a lineup they could roll out there where like they put Giannis on Durant, Tucker on Harden, and Drew on Kyrie, and it's like, ooh, it's rough, right? Like that is a lineup they could do. I don't think Tucker's the same guy he was a couple years ago. Giannis is probably a better guy than it was a couple years ago, though, so that's a trade-off. Drew Holiday's had weird success covering Harden in his New Orleans days, but like that doesn't mean anyone's on Kyrie, right? I guess does Middleton try that? And like we saw last night, right? I mean, Luke, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like look like you also need to cover Blake Griffin. Like we can talk about Joe Harris a lot, but like Blake Griffin's still dunking on people, and that's a lot of offense. I just feel like I've seen the Bucks play a lot of defense, and that's a tough series for me to call. So I would have trouble with the word ease there, but that's a tough out.
Oh, that's gonna be fun. Real quick, if Brooklyn does get to face Philly, does James Harden make Dwight Howard cry so bad that he has to retire? Like actually cry?
Well, Dwight Howard's probably close to retiring anyway, right? There's all kinds of fun things. There's also D'Antoni. If I'm a Rockets guy, if you can't tell, but you got D'Antoni and Harden versus Morey and Howard, and like those guys are both in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
The storyline for that series.
Yeah, completely.
The trade that could have happened. Philly could have had him. They didn't want to trade.
Philly could have had him. So Ben Simmons, like if Ben Simmons chokes, they'd be like, "Oh, we could have had James Harden," right? Like those kind of things.
Wow.
You also have like, I feel like there's Kyrie bad blood with Philly too, because he's got bad blood with most of the Eastern Conference at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's a fun series. I don't think Philly's as good as Milwaukee or Brooklyn. But if Milwaukee and Brooklyn go to like a tough 7 games with an overtime or 2 in there, and then Philly has like a sweep, it's like, ooh, like they get like rested like that.
That would make it interesting.
That wouldn't be fair. Next one is talking about a couple things for after the NBA season concludes. We talked about the Clippers blowing it up. And there will be a superstar bounce very quick, right? Whether it's, Phoenix because Chris Paul got hurt and they get dipped, or Julius Randle's an all-star, he gets bounced, or, Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal are both in Washington. Looks like they're going to get done up, right? The hot tea cold brew segment here is the Thunder need to trade draft picks because they have so many for whoever the first star that gets bounced is. So first I want to hear what do you guys think, Jamal? I'll start with you. Like, what stars are potentially on the move this summer? Because outside of Kawhi, it's mostly got to be trades. Do you have anyone you want to see moved, I guess? And then do you think the Thunder, with all that capital, need to go after them?
Ooh, well, I will. On the first point, I will say OKC does need to make a move, because I think what they need to do is show SGA, and I will say this repeatedly: Doc Rivers did not want to give up that kid because he knew he was going to be good, and it was a shame that he had to give him up for Paul George, and now you're seeing what's happening. But I think as far as big stars on the move, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I could honestly see Chris Paul maybe moving on, but like I said before the show, it's going to be hard for him to turn down $44 million right now.
Yeah,
playing with the team he has right now in Devin Booker. I'm gonna give credit to DeAndre Ayton. He has played well throughout this series, even though it's only been 2 games. And I think the Lakers need to do a better job against him, even though most of his scoring has been off of either broken plays or out in transition. But as far as the big star on the move, I would probably say Chris Paul, maybe towards New York. I would probably also think about Kyle Lowry. I don't know how much longer he's going to be in Toronto. Definitely the Clippers. If they decide to blow it up, I could see Kawhi going elsewhere. They were saying Miami. Who knows if that remains true? There's still a lot of fluidity right now as far as big stars on the move. But I think one team that could possibly be like a big on the radar move would probably be the Knicks, who have been in as I kept saying before, they need a point guard. Because do you honestly expect a 30-something-year-old Derrick Rose on the bench and a struggling guard and Elfrid Payton really be able to carry this team? Honestly.
Yeah, no, the Knicks need help. Because even if they get out of this, they got to go play Philly next. Luke, talk to me. And I actually want to hear your take because I got a surprise star that I think it could be. Should the Thunder make moves to go get a disgruntled star in the coming summer because someone's going to get bounced in the first round?
Jamal, hear me out. How do you feel about 2 first-rounders and Al Horford, and you don't have Jamal Murray anymore?
Nah. Especially OKC is in our division. Hell no. People keep beating up on them for years. Stop.
I'm just looking at it, seeing, they have so many picks, and Michael Porter Jr. is so good. And I'm not saying Al Horford's going to be the guy, but like they literally just told him, it's like, hey, we just don't want your veteran presence here because we're trying to blow this up as terribly as we can. So just having that with a couple of young guys, I think Jamal, I don't know if he's going to get moved, but I think there's going to be a lot more talk with him. Now, we got to see how this Portland series works out. Obviously, it'd be a lot different if Jamal was playing. But, I mean, there was rumors before, granted, it was for the Harden trade, but, they just have so many picks, and Porter Jr. looks like he's going to be good. I don't think they're going to break up the core, but, I mean, it's at least some food for thought.
Yeah, it is. And trust me, we've heard all the rumors out here, but when you put all the resources and all that you have in Murray, Jokic, and eventually Gordon and MPJ, they're both going to be coming up for big money as well. The Denver front office is really going to have to make a couple of tough decisions about all those guys. Do they want to keep everybody intact and really try to make a run? Because I think what they're trying to figure out is like, look, we honestly don't know how much longer LeBron James is going to play. We don't. I don't know how really good Utah is. If this was just a one-trick pony year for them, I know Phoenix is still going to be around, even if Chris Paul is not there or not. I see Memphis really starting to make their move now. So you really have to consider, like, where are you in the Western Conference echelon right now? So if you're the Nuggets, you have to play this smartly because you could either be at the top of the West or you can be middling for it for the next couple of years, even with Jokic as an MVP candidate.
No doubt.
So because it's the Midwest time, or was that Mountain Time Zone, and something close to Luke's heart, I got to ask about this one. If your boss said, you don't get to work today, and if your best coworker got you COVID, and if you got bounced in the first round by a kid with braids and a big dude with bad haircut, and your name's Donovan Mitchell, do you find a way out of Utah? Like, I can think about it because, like, theoretically, this is a Louisville guy. For those of you that don't know, that's Luke Zalmbonner. Theoretically, that would. I mean, they've been building towards this 1 seed. They've had some flameouts in the playoffs in the past. If they lose to Memphis, it's only one game. Game 2 is tonight, and they're going to look great and look like an idiot, right? But they didn't look like that great in game 1. I don't know that Donovan Mitchell coming back. I don't know how healthy he is, but is he going to be able to stay in front of John Morant? I don't know. I wonder if he's a guy on the move this summer. And frankly, the Thunder part here is they're one of a handful of teams with a ton of assets, and the Thunder, I think that's a cool fit next to Shea. That doesn't mean that he has to go there, though. Do you see Donovan Mitchell on the move this summer at all?
I don't see him on the move. I do have nightmares about him in orange and blue, but it's not the Thunder.
He could fix the same problems that Jamal's talking about too.
Yeah, imagine him there. But I don't think he'll be on the move. I see where you're coming from with it. I think that he's embedded himself in that city. I think the franchise has named him the guy. And I think if push came to shove, if he got mad about something and like really voiced it, they would fix the other issue to make him happy. I mean, I think we use the word superstar way too lightly in today's world. I think right now he's a star, and he has that type of potential to get there. So I just don't think that they would sacrifice letting somebody like him go. But at the same time, who knows? We've seen some really stupid trades in the past years. So I would, can Sam Presti give away picks? Is he actually capable of that? And if so, how many is it? You could trade Mitchell for 3, 4 first rounders, whatever it is. You'd have to get something back too.
Well, and to be fair, this would only be on his accord, right? Like he'd have to make something ugly happen. He's under contract through 25, 26. That's his
signed that big contract.
Yeah, that's his turning age 29 season. Theoretically, it would have to be him saying, "I want out this John right now." Now, I will say the Utah thing is weird. Like Rudy Gobert and him were not getting along, and they were getting along, and there were times this year they didn't look like they were getting along. And Quinn Snyder's like trying to rob Gotham on the side. I don't know. I just don't know what's going on with that whole group there.
Nick's getting back in the game.
I love that.
The 2-point lead. Good for you, Spike. We'll see what happens. I guess we'll see what I don't have the live game on because it's on TNT, not NBA. Anyway, I just wonder if that's not a forever deal, and he's a guy I could see. I think the easier one might be Kawhi, and we talked about Kawhi ad nauseum earlier, so I mean to go on and on about that.
I do want to throw 2 more names in there.
Who else you got?
I would really keep an eye on, and they both play for the same team, and they're in the playoffs right now. I would take a look at CJ McCollum and Dame Lillard. I'll take a look at them both because New York's been rumored to try to land Lillard in some kind of trade or some kind of big move. So I would look for that this summer.
I think you keep Lillard and trade CJ if you got to blow it up. I will say one thing that never made sense to me about Portland is having 2 small guards because you're going to bleed points. And you also don't have a very good rim protector. Like if you have 2 small guards, you've got to have someone behind them to deter shots, I should say. And if you don't have that, you can't have 2 small guards. And they've invested in 2 guys that are undersized and they're not undersized. They're just both point guard sized, I guess, really. And anyway, it looks like CJ signed to the 24 season. So that means that there would be 3 more years left with a lot of money on that contract. Lillard's worth more money, and I think they've got him locked up.
Can I mention another nightmare real quick since we're talking about the Knicks?
Either one of them in the Knicks?
No. You know 2 players who both have player options?
Kawhi and who else?
Chris Paul.
Both going to New York.
I will say,
going to New York, they might just win it all next year.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
I gotta be honest. New York is starving for something.
I might have to go live in a box in Brooklyn for
man. If Brooklyn didn't get done this year, and then you had Paul and Kawhi go to New York across the bridge there in the boroughs, that's not good for the Brooklyn Nets, huh? Anyway, I think that some superstar is going to lose, if not multiple, in the first round. I think someone's on the move because of it. This last hot tea cold brew is really brought up in the last few hours, and I don't know if y'all have had a chance to read this story, so I'm going to say it and then I'm going to kind of summarize it. But hot tea cold brew. I just start with Jamal on the last one, so I'll start with Luke on this one. Hot tea cold brew. The Minnesota Timberwolves will be sold and moved. So for those that have not followed the story, breaking article this afternoon on ESPN by Wojnarowski, reporting with a couple other folks that basically this minority owner, what's the guy's name? I don't want to get it wrong. Meyer Orbach. I think that's right. It's Meyer Orbach, Orbach. Anyway, he is a 17% shareholder in the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they're in the Minnesota Lynx, and thus does not have enough to override any decision being made. But he's pointing out that in the sale that was going to go to A-Rod and the rich guy, that they were going to have to sign some documentation initially to not move the team for a certain amount of times. And it sounds like that may be, even though it's been signed, may be getting waived. And there's discrepancy on what amount of time that has to stay in Minnesota. Anyway, it sounds like under the table that the new ownership wanted to move them, presumably, I think everyone's assuming, to Seattle or Vegas. And so hot tea, cold brew, Luke, the Minnesota Timberwolves will be sold and move.
I'm gonna say hot tea because I think they will be sold. I think at the end of the day, money is king, and the ownership will eventually fold and just say whatever, just do whatever you want with the franchise. I think they want to keep it in Minnesota. They haven't had a good history at all since the Lakers left. But it sounds like everything's going to point to Seattle. I know Vegas is also an option, but I'd be real surprised if it didn't end up in Seattle. Or maybe it'd just be a random team. I would love for it to go to Seattle or Vegas because if they're talking about expansion, ideally, hopefully Louisville would get one of those teams and throw them in the Yum Center. So I kind of hope that someone will go ahead and move to Seattle or Vegas. But yeah, I'm going hot tea. I think if they get sold, I think they're moving it. I don't think it will be right away. And I think it'll be one of those drawn out things. I think it'd be like 2028 or 2030. They'll make that giant announcement or whatever.
Fair enough. Same question to you, Jamal. Hot tea, cold brew. The Minnesota Timberwolves will be sold and move.
Hot tea. And like I said on one of the previous shows I had on here, I give them 5 to 10 years before Minnesota goes to Seattle. And it looks like with this news right now, it looks like it's coming to fruition. So, I mean, let's be honest. Minnesota sports teams, not just the Timberwolves. You're talking about the Twins, the Vikings. I guess you can throw the Minnesota Wild in there as well. These are franchises that have not really had a lot of success in Minnesota for almost 40, 50 years. I mean, and let's face it, the real franchise who's had the most success there has been the Minnesota Lynx. Go figure. So I would not be surprised at all if, as Luke said, if it goes to Seattle or Las Vegas. I'm hoping it's Seattle because there was a lot of rich history there that was taken away from Seattle. So the NBA would do itself a favor by bringing it back.
Fair enough. I think it's interesting because you hate to see teams stolen from cities. I think the interesting thing with Minnesota is it feels like this team that's continually so poorly run, right? And so, you could almost argue they wasted the best of Kevin Garnett's career. You could argue they're doing the same with Karl Anthony Towns, and like this idea that we don't need to reward bad ownership, we need to sell the team. I agree with. The idea that we need to punish the city and move the team is something I have a harder time agreeing with. But it also seems to be the only way you get a new owner, right? So if you don't do that, you won't get the new owner, and then the Timberwolves just continue to waste people's careers, right? And so I don't know what the right answer there is. I think there's this weird irony is the wrong word, but if Seattle gets a team by stealing it from someone else, that still feels icky, even if I like the city of Seattle more, right? Or I don't know. I spent 24 hours in Seattle and no time in Minneapolis, but I don't know how I would feel about that. I do think that billionaires are always sneaky. And if the billionaire wants the team in Seattle, they're gonna play in Seattle. That's just how that goes. Oh. All right, we're gonna move into a question. Jamal had this idea, and so we're gonna jump into our open container question on this one. Open container, which pops top for Yeti. You can get anything in or out, hot, cold, ice, liquids, anything. So our open container question is: now there are fans back in the stadiums. Stadiums are not at full capacity across the board, but there are clearly a lot of people in each one. Some are having entirely vaccinated sections that are very much impacting the game. I wonder, as I'm watching box scores right now in the Knicks game, how that's impacting Madison Square Garden, right? And frankly, I'm excited to see what Staples looks like when the Suns come back for Game 3 in Staples. But open container question, Jamal, what's the best NBA stadium either for fans or to play in to you?
And I've been wrestling with it all day because it literally just came off the top of my head. and I know we've been, whether it's ragging on the Knicks or whatever the case may be, I honestly don't think there is a better venue for playoff basketball than MSG. Because you saw it on Sunday, and you're seeing it tonight right now. That when the Knicks are good, and when you have MSG that is absolutely rocking, I can't think of another stadium that can even rival that at the moment. I just don't see it. But I won't there. But that takes nothing away from what these other stadiums are going to name, and this is going all the way back in NBA history, not just present day. You talk about Key Arena in Seattle, the old Portland Coliseum, way back when Clyde Drexler and them boys were there. I still think of Utah as the Delta Center. We know how extremely hard it was to play in that building. I'll give you another hidden gem that I think people really underestimated in the 90s, and I think y'all appreciate this. Do you all remember Market Square Arena in Indianapolis?
I'd never been there, but I do remember watching it on TV. Yeah.
Matter of fact, and this is just for everybody as well, not just us here. Look up 1995 Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Pacers and the Magic. One of the greatest, in my opinion, probably the greatest playoff finish that you will ever see. Look it up.
Am I doing this right now? Is that what we're doing right now?
No, not now, but just
you should have asserted your dominance, Jamal. Like, yes.
For the real casual fan.
I would say I vaguely remember. I didn't know if you wanted a play-by-play because I don't think I can just play the audio. It's the clip on YouTube's 50 minutes though, and I was like, I can't play the whole thing. Good game though. Y'all should go watch that clip. It's on YouTube. After you're done with this clip, go watch that clip. Obviously, Indiana being good helps a lot, right? That's the interesting thing in all the things. Luke, as you see it, best place to play or to be a fan in for NBA basketball?
Man, I just got done reading 11 Rings. I don't know if y'all have read it. The
Phil Jackson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he talks about the Bulls and the Lakers, but I'm not going with Staples or the United Center. In there, he talks about when the Celtics beat them in the finals. Man, they couldn't leave, and the Boston police wouldn't do anything about the fans who were bombarding their bus. So, I mean, it's like Boston is one. I mean, there's those old stories. It's on the ESPN, I don't know if it's a 30 for 30s or E60s, whichever it is, the rivalry between them whenever they put the Lakers in like that broom closet and just let them sweat it out and turn the AC off back in the 80s. It's like, the Garden is just, whether it's the original Boston Garden or the TD Garden, those fans are, when their team's winning, when their team's right, as much as I think that their fans go overboard sometimes, like I love fan bases like that. And also to back you, man, MSG, I can't really stand the Knicks, but I'm not blind to the fact I still love basketball, and it's the Garden. Like it's the Garden. And those fans are rocking. When their team's right, those fans are rocking. And they just want, both teams just want guys who are gonna buckle down and fight. And I think Staples is awesome and everything. And Lakers fans I just feel like that Northeast vibe is just like blue collar. We'll beat you up if you beat our team, literally. And
you can add Philadelphia in there too.
Yeah,
God.
Yeah. Just like all those Northeast teams, like minus Brooklyn, we're just the nice guys who just have a trio and we're gonna win championships. So it's whatever.
It's funny when Jamal asked this question, I was thinking like, man, and like talk about like realizing privilege. I was like, oh, I've been to a lot of games. I've only been to one playoff game. I was thinking, so like I've been to Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. I've been to a game in New Orleans. I've been to a game in Oklahoma City. When I was in college, I went to a Staples Center twice, but they were both for Clippers games. Like, not good Clippers games. That was bad Clippers.
Who was on those teams? I don't want to ask you when you were in college.
Well, like Jamal Crawford, like back in the day. Blake was supposed to be 1 year, but that was the year he got hurt.
Okay.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's why we got the tickets, and then he hurt himself in preseason. We're like, well, these are worthless, but I guess we'll go. I think of like the shame is that like Oracle for like we believe Warriors was my answer, and the culture there changed a lot, not just because the team moved. There's no longer marijuana smoke in the rafters. Like that's just not the same vibe as the Oracle used to be. I agree with Utah. It looks like it's always impossible to play. I've never been to the Garden or to a game in the Garden. My brother's in Brooklyn, so he's been to a game at MSG, and visiting him, I've seen the outside of Barclays, and Barclays looks almost like a spaceship to be a rocking stadium. But I will say the underrated stadium I've been in that I think is crazy every time I go, and it's probably because I'm always a fan of the opposing team, is San Antonio, man.
Oh yeah.
Like I walk out of there and I'm like, the way people are hollering, I don't know if they know anything about basketball, but they know that the team in white and black is the team they root for. I leave that every time I left that stadium. I was like, oh my, that play, and it's a mid-market stadium. It's not as big. It's not whatever, but like those people are passionate about Spurs basketball.
Yeah. Do either of y'all know? Remember the Alamo Dome?
Yeah. It was huge. Huge.
That was a huge, probably the biggest stadium in the NBA at that time. I think
because they
the 50,000 people.
Yeah, because they also opened, so like they closed it in half for basketball games, and they could play indoor football. Like the Alamo Bowl is in the Alamo Dome. But the San Antonio fans get nuts, and like I mean that in like the most affectionate way possible. Like I'm not a Spurs fan, but I have a weird respect for Spurs fans because like they just have done stuff right for 20 years. Anyway, that was a cool experience. The only playoff game I've been to is in Oklahoma City. Houston was playing Oklahoma City, and so Dallas is not that far from Oklahoma City. And so we drove up there, and frankly, my brother and I joke it was the Nene game. Like they played in 2017, and like Harden was just okay. Russ was just okay, but like Nene showed up for like 16 points off the bench, and it was like that's the Nene game. But that was a cool stadium, but it just didn't like I don't know Oklahoma City. I've been to a game in Utah, but it was not a playoff game. It was not a game of any consequence. They're playing a bad Knicks team. Anyway, I think San Antonio is crazy, and I like San Antonio a lot. If you can't tell, I like base my travel on like how can I find a game. And in the summertime, we do the same with baseball, but I'm not as big a baseball guy, but it's fun to go to a stadium.
Yeah, I give a credit to all the small mid-market majors. So as you said, San Antonio, I would throw Sacramento in there when they were good. I would throw Memphis in there too. Yeah. I think those are places where if you get the fans involved, they will back their team no matter what. I
would like to see Memphis. Memphis in Memphis.
We won't have to wait long.
That's obviously I'd like to go because Memphis is a beautiful city to visit too. Super cool culture, great food, great atmosphere, music everywhere. But I would like to see a game there just because like they're good. It's the small market, like you're talking Jamal, and like that city gets rowdy, and so I assume they'll get rowdy for basketball too, right?
Yeah. I'm about 6 hours.
You're about 6 hours away. Is that where you would head for the closest game, Luke?
Yeah, I actually shout out to my brother Zach. He for my birthday he took me up to Indiana, so I got to see this Brooklyn team in action. Saw KD drop 42.
42.
So, just like a nonchalant 42. Kyrie wasn't playing, Harden wasn't playing, and KD just came in and did his thing. It was really awesome to be there and see that. I was hyped to see like KD and all those guys, but I was like, that's Steve Nash. That is Steve Nash right there. But yeah, no, I wanted to go to Memphis last year, and then COVID happened. And then this year, obviously. But next year, no, I definitely plan to go down to Memphis. I kind of just want to make it like a long weekend and go to a game, maybe two if they have a back-to-back.
Yeah, the last game I went to was here in Denver. The Lakers came in town. It was it was an overtime game. The teams were going back and forth. I actually had a chance to take my dad up here from Illinois. We went to go see the game. It was a blast. I think it's very clear that Denver fans do not like Laker fans at all. They made that pretty clear.
And that's awesome. No, that's really, really cool. No, but I have an affinity for the Northeastern stadiums, but they're so far away. I've just never been to a game there. Like, and so I don't mean to like dismiss that. Like, MSG is supposed to be the Mecca. My brother went and saw a game there. Like I said, he lives there now. But I've just never been to a game there, and so I'll take his word for it. That was a great question, though. Now that fans are back, it is weird and cool to see fans back. Yeah. Go get your shots, people. The more you get your shots, the faster we get these things back. All right, we're going to jump into a segment called the Long Two. The long two is the mid-range shot. So a mid-range jump shot is a long two-pointer. That means it is like not next to the basket. It's a little bit farther away. And it's hated by some people, right? Because like if you just take a step back, it's worth 150% of the points. It seems silly. But it is our shot. So with that shot, I want two important, one per conference, non-all-stars in the playoffs. So like an important player that is not an all-star, superstar caliber guy. Give me one from one of the conferences, Jamal.
Okay, so from the East, man, and it's hard to pick one from the East because it just looks like the top tier teams have really like taken a stranglehold on a lot of these teams. But if I had to pick one, I'm looking at Tyler Hero for Miami. I'm wondering, where has he been? Like it's like he's just completely disappeared. And now I have to figure what Jason Tatum, what he said about him during last year's run, is it starting to run true? Was he becoming just a bubble player? So I think that's something I really want to. I'm mindful of next time Miami and Milwaukee play. I'm gonna watch him very closely. Now for the Western Conference, I really am. Yes, call me a homer, please, if you will. I honestly don't even care at this point. But I'm looking at MPJ. I want to see if he can take his game up to Portland, where I know those fans, they will be ready to go when the time Game 3 comes around tomorrow. So I want to see if he can take his game up there in a hostile environment, and can he support Joker the way he needs to, so Denver can be successful.
All right, Luke, same question to you. One per conference. Important non-all-star in the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, West, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go for one DeAndre Ayton. I think.
I guess that he's not an all-star.
I haven't cheated yet. I think he was going to have to step up against AD and Drummond. He's going to have to fight for those rebounds if they want to advance. And if they do advance, he's got more of a challenge ahead of him. And if they can, with Gobert and everything in the future, and if they can make it to the finals, and it's not the Nets. He's got to go up against Embiid or Giannis. So I think Ayton is, he's got to step up, and that's a big reason I'm a little worried about the Suns, is because a guy like that, I feel like he has a lot riding on his shoulders right now, and we just haven't paid attention to it. And then the one I'm cheating with out of the West is literally anybody else on the Mavericks not named Luka. So somebody has to do something.
One of the guys I listed was Tim Hardaway Jr. That's
literally any of them. It doesn't take your pick. But out of the East, I'm kind of going to stick with the homer thing. I kind of mentioned him earlier. It's Joe Harris. If the big three can be, I don't want to say they can be locked down, but at some point they might have to refer to someone else. And that someone else is likely going to be Joe Harris. And with his sharpshooting ability, I've watched the Nets now for a while. It hasn't just been during the big three. I've seen him get cold and I've seen him get real hot. If he's cold, I'm going to be worried. Now, he usually doesn't stay cold for multiple games in a row, which is a good thing. But he's going to have to be on his A game every game in the playoffs because they're going to be gunning for him, especially whenever we get to Milwaukee and Philly.
Yeah. So y'all brought up a couple guys. So I made like a list to make sure I didn't not have guys ready. Jamal, you mentioned Tyler Hero. I think, frankly, not just because I like clowning him for not being involved in the James Harden trade, reportedly. I think that's fair. Like, a big part of their success last year was this guy scoring opposite Bam, opposite Jimmy. If this were about all-stars, I'd say Bam needs to play better too, right? but that's something they seem to be missing. I was going to say Tim Hardaway Jr. That Luke kind of he said like any Maverick because Luka was the All-Star, and that's fair, right? THJ though is like shooting lights out, and like if he's going to continue to shoot 60% from three, they'll win the whole thing. I mean that's just nuts, right? Yeah. The other ones I have, I'll work from right to left my list here because I want to hear what Jamal said was the last one. Dante DiVincenzo in Milwaukee, right? Like a rotational guard that at the end of the day is going to like have a lot of possessions where he gets switched on to in the next round to Kyrie or switched on to a Harden. Like he's going to have to do more than he's typically asked to do. And also respectfully, like he needs to score some because you're going to score a lot of points to beat Brooklyn. And so I'd like to see Dante DiVincenzo stand up. The cheat code I had here a little bit was Tobias Harris was not an All-Star, and that seems really important for Philadelphia.
That was a robbery.
He probably should have just been an All-Star, and that would make him moot. But Tobias Harris is really good. If they play Brooklyn or Milwaukee, those teams have what I'd consider big threes. He's their third, right? Maybe people would say Ben Simmons or whatever, but like I think of Ben Simmons ahead of him and would have him as their third, and so I'd call that important. Moving west, again, you said Hardaway Jr. I'd say just Nurkic in Portland. I'm enthusiastic to see, again, with two small guards, you need rim protection. He also in the what's up?
He ain't gonna give that to you. Stop playing.
And in the current matchup, he's got a guard like we talked about, like the potential MVP. Like that's all hard. That's all really, really hard. If he plays well, they have a chance, but he has to. My last one, though, is so I see this team matching up with the Lakers in the second round and your Denver Nuggets, right? And I see forwards, front courts versus one another. That's the fun part of this, right? You got AD, you've got Jokic, you've got LeBron, you got MPJ, or name's escaping me now because he was in the dunk contest, and the guy they just traded for. But forwards in this contest are fun, right? Like big Andre Drummond too in LA, like big men are big men. That's fun. The guards on paper head to Los Angeles, right? Like Schroeder, it's like, Schroeder, Jamal Murray out. Like, Schroeder probably wins unless Facu Campazzo pulls it out. Now, this man is the 30-year-old rookie from Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
I legitimately was, when Jamal Murray went down, was like doing some stuff for Belly Up, and I was like, who replaces Jamal Murray? This guy? And here's the deal. If he plays like relatively similarly to a Dennis Schroeder type, they got a real chance. They have a real chance, right, Jamal?
Yeah, I'll agree somewhat. The issue I have with him sometimes is that he'll pass up open shots, and I saw that throughout most of the regular season. Like he can become too unselfish. But I'll tell you what, though, a guy who I thought was really buried on the rotation for most of the season, but I think now may start to play a vital role. Marcus Howard out of Marquette.
A good name.
He might be something that Portland didn't account for, and really have to make either one of Portland's guards have to work on both ends of the floor. Who knows?
Yeah. Anyway, I see like there'll be this like microscope on Facu Campazzo for that potential Lakers series, right? And like for better or worse, it's going to come down to like comparing him versus the Lakers backcourt. And is it fair to like tie this guy to Caruso, tie this guy to Schroeder? I don't know, but if he outplays them, they might win. Anyway, that was my fun there. Do y'all have anything for Wednesday Night Rights? Anything reading anything interesting? Anything of note?
Not at the moment, because honestly, now this Knicks Hawks game is really starting to get to the nitty-gritty. So if New York really wants a chance to win this series, they have to win tonight, no matter what.
Yeah, you can't go back to Atlanta down 0-2. Been reading anything, Luke? What you got?
If I could throw a plug in, I wrote an article right before the playoffs started. I think it was Thursday or Friday. It came out, and it kind of just went back and replayed the Boston-Brooklyn trade. The most fun part about writing some things sometimes. Is you get writer's block. We all three of us experience it. Is going back and like doing some research on things. Like I felt like whenever those two teams got matched up, I really wanted to go back and play it. It's wild to see like what was given up. Then you got Jaylen Brown, you got Jason Tatum. Some people forget that Colin Sexton was actually that other piece that got traded in the Kyrie trade, which ended up now he's with Brooklyn. And, maybe the Celtics have more longevity with those guys, but Brooklyn looks like they might hang banners first. And, like, that's not a biased take. Like, they legitimately might hang banners first, maybe multiple. So it was just fun to really go back and review that trade and talk about how it's actually had an impact from 2013 draft night all the way up to literally today.
Man, Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce are part of that deal.
Jason Terry.
That too.
Yeah. Well, and that's such a crazy trade to look back on because, like, at the time, it felt like there was no way Brooklyn could win the deal, right? I want to take this moment to shout out and, like, clown on Boston because they were in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2018. The hell happened to y'all? like Eastern Conference Finals, all these young guys, and what the hell happened?
Last year too.
Yeah, the hell happened. Anyway, writing. I did a deal about game ones that is already old news because we're into game twos. But if you want to go back and look at my thoughts on a couple game one things, I'm doing a thing on Memphis and their backcourt that I'll finish up after tonight's game. And then that'll go out tomorrow. Obviously, Rockets Roundup, which are taking a whole different turn after the season's over. I guess last week's Rockets Roundup was about former Rockets in the playoffs. So, like, who to root for? Like, do you root for James Harden in Brooklyn? Do you root for Russell Westbrook in Washington? Do you root for Robert Covington in Portland or Chris Paul? You have a really good team of former Rockets in the playoffs that are not currently on the Rockets, and that was rough. As far as stuff I'm reading, I did read a bit about Boston and Brooklyn. I thought it was fun to read. And I read Mirren Fader about Andre Drummond. Mirren always writes about like the person side of sports, which is really interesting. And like I didn't realize Andre Drummond was very complex. I thought he was just kind of this big, for lack of a better phrase, ogre that got a lot of rebounds. And he's a much more complex person than that. I'm still working my way through Kate Fagan's All the Colors Came Out. I mentioned that last week. They actually got this hat. I ordered off the Lauer Rangers. So Kate Fagan's father had ALS, which is also Lou Gehrig's disease, and she is now part of like the Levitard Friend universe with Metal Arc Media, and they had her on Lauer After Hours, and then they make hats, and I saw these hats with like got Lou Gehrig on it, or like stripes number 4. I'm not a Yankees guy. Wife's a Yankees person. I'm not a Yankees guy.
Whoa.
I'm an Astros guy. I'm all Houston everything.
I know that's like how's that dynamic going?
How's that going for you, buddy?
Well, there was a rough weekend every now and then. I mean, you can do the same thing with basketball. Frankly, football, like that's just the way that sports are. But anyway, Kay Fagan's Other Colors Came Out as a book about the lessons you learn from your her, in her case, her father, that like have to do with basketball, but also don't have to do with basketball. And so that's a really cool deal. I'll also. No, I'll leave that because that's all I'm actually reading. I want to read. Jonathan Charks just wrote a thing today about like his life that I looked up when we were talking about Jonathan Charks before the show started. I want to go read, but I can't talk about it with that read, I guess. Are y'all ready for a buzzer beater? Do you have a take before we go back and watch Spike Lee talk to Trae Young?
Yeah, I got one.
All right, that was confident, so I think that means Jamal wants to go first. You got one, Luke, or you need to think for a second?
I'll think one up. I'm trying to decide if I want to bash the Hawks again and just – I don't have to talk about Oladipo this week, so.
You can't talk about Oladipo this week. All right, so Jamal, ready in 5, 4, 3, 2, and go.
So a couple of days on this day, a couple years ago for LeBron James, he and the Miami Heat defeated the Chicago Bulls 4-1, went on to the NBA Finals. Then fast forward 4 years later, he did the same thing after he and the Cleveland Cavaliers swept the Atlanta Hawks 4-0. So it just goes to show that LeBron James always comes up the show in the conference finals. So I still would not count out LeBron James at this point.
All right. And Luke, you think of something?
Let's see. I'm trying to think which one I'm going to go with. Just start it. I'm gonna go with one of them.
3.
I got 4 of them going in my head.
1. Go.
Okay, so I have been a Brooklyn fan now for about 4 or 5 years. Started being a fan because they sucked and everyone couldn't call me a front runner. Now people are telling me I'm a front runner. I want no one more than Joe Harris to hoist that trophy, that Larry O'Brien, and get that ring on ring ceremony night more than anybody else. So shout out Joe Harris. Shout out real Brooklyn fans.
You know what? That would be the best person to raise that trophy up first. Not Kyrie, not Kevin Durant, not James Harden. He would be the first.
Is he the only player with no? It's Claxton. I would say with significant minutes that was drafted by them.
No, Joe wasn't even drafted by them.
Right, he was with Cleveland, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he was drafted by Cleveland. So him and Dinwiddie were both like given up on, and Brooklyn just had to start bringing guys in. So him and Dinwiddie are the only original guys that kind of built that grit. Claxton and Perry are the only guys on the roster who have been drafted by the Nets. Reggie Perry's that center from Mississippi State. He's number 0. He just looks like a giant rock whenever he comes out there.
Yeah, no, I knew the guy was. I just didn't realize he was drafted by them. I swear I thought he was drafted. That's funny.
Acting the fool again.
Yeah. All right. Mine is actually. I think I can get this under time this time. All right. Okay. 3, 2, 1. All right. So over the weekend, Arike Ogunbowale tweeted out that she was rewatching her own game and noticed that the New York broadcaster was mispronouncing her name the entire broadcast. Listen, Parge, you got one job. No one mispronounces her brother's last name, Ogunbowale, on NFL broadcast. You got to get that right when you've got one job. You can't miss Arike's name, and she's a stud. I really like watching Arike play basketball. If you guys are, we're in the NBA playoffs now, so like this very NBA playoff centric show. It's the early part of the WNBA season. If you are fiending for some basketball this summer, I really want to continue to recommend the WNBA.
Oh, you already know. I will make sure I will watch, and not just postseason, but throughout the season. I want to see some of these other big teams really start to come up to challenge either Seattle or Las Vegas right now.
For sure. It's a great league. I think League Pass is like $17. Like it is not out of budget to be a WNBA fan. I saw something else today that like nationally televised games are like up, a bunch of percentage points in like viewership as opposed to a year or two ago. So get on the bandwagon. Talk to us, Jamal. Where can people find you if they're looking for you on social media to talk about the Knicks?
See, you're gonna piss off Luke doing that.
I'm already pissed. I deserve a couple. I've taken some rocket shots over the past. It's fine.
Okay. We walk away from that minefield. So if y'all want to find me, I'm on Twitter. The hashtag is right there. Also on Facebook and Instagram. Mainly find me on Twitter, so I'll start to post more stuff on there, but that's where I'm at.
And Luke, where can people find you at?
They're on LA Graham 2. I always wanted to do this. It's right there. And then that's Twitter, and then Instagram, Graham6141. You can find me there. And then also check out some Nets articles. I need to come up with some stuff, trying to figure out how bad I want to bury Boston. And some Nets articles coming up.
I'm surprised you haven't made a funeral for him.
What's that?
I'm surprised you haven't made a funeral for him already.
I'm being cautious.
Being cautious.
Wait, come on, man. Come on.
Game 2 did not look super cautious. Obviously, you can find me at Ainsworth 512. That's PAINSWRTH 512, all one word on Twitter and Instagram. This show is called at Midweek Midrange on Twitter and Instagram. You can find nightly clips, posts on Instagram every day. Don't be afraid to pull up to any of our social media channels. You can also find links to Yeti and Belly Up Sports on those social media channels. That's it for us tonight, as we're going to go watch Spike Lee cheer on the Knicks to what is a victory. That's the course of the show. We went long enough for the Knicks to come back, so it's time to wrap it up. But anyway, thank y'all for, as always, being sure to pull up. Take care.
Denver was rolled tomorrow.